it's been on my mind a lot lately. Psykers in the Warhammer 40K universe. They're such a wild card. I mean, on the one hand, they have this incredible power, power that can bend reality, crush armies.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's a power tied to this chaotic dimension, the warp, full of demons and nightmarish creatures.
Right. It's that paradox that makes them both essential and terrifying. And what's really interesting is that psykers aren't unique to humans. Most intelligent species in the 40K galaxy utilize psykers for warfare.
Yeah.
Except for a few very specific exceptions.
Yeah, like the Tau.
Right.
The Drukhari and the Necrons.
Yeah.
Each with their own reasons.
Exactly.
The Tau, well, they're kind of like the new kids on the block, in terms of galactic civilization.
Yeah.
They haven't been around long enough to evolve psykers yet.
Right.
Meanwhile, you have the Drukhari, these ancient and incredible powerful beings who actually fear psychic power because they believe it accelerates their soul's decay, which they're trying to avoid.
Right.
And then there are the Necrons.
Yeah.
A race of soulless machines who were once living beings, but underwent this process called biotransference. Essentially shedding their flesh and souls to become immortal metal skeletons. This process completely severed their connection to the warp, the source of psychic power, and they view it with absolute hatred and fear.
Right, which brings us to the Imperium of Man. Their relationship with psykers is so complex. I mean, they need psykers for all sorts of things, like interstellar communication and navigating the warp. But they're also terrified of the potential for corruption and destruction.
Right. I mean, the Emperor himself understood the inherent dangers of psychic power and largely banned its use throughout the Imperium.
Yes.
The risks of demonic possession and the sheer destructive potential of uncontrolled psykers were just too great.
Absolutely.
And yet the Imperium continues to rely heavily on psykers. That's where the black ships come in. These massive vessels that scour the Imperium, collecting psykers, like a Grim Reaper's harvest. Some of these psykers are trained for sanctioned roles. They become astropaths for interstellar communication, or sanctioned psykers in the Astra Militarum, maybe even librarians within the Space Marine chapters or inquisitors. But for many others, their fate is far grimmer.
Yeah.
They are sacrificed to sustain the Emperor's life and to power the Astronomicon, this psychic beacon that guides ships through the warp. It's a stark reminder of the price the Imperium is willing to pay for psychic power. To try and maintain some semblance of control, they've developed a system to categorize psyker power levels.
Yeah.
It's called the assignment. It's a 24-point scale based on the Greek alphabet that helps them assess the strength and potential threat of a psyker. Even ordinary humans who can't use psychic powers have a place on this scale. They fall at the very bottom.
Right at the bottom.
At row pi. But as you move up the scale, the power and the danger increase dramatically. Anyone reaching iota or above attracts the immediate attention of the Inquisition.
Yeah.
And then you have the plus scale for truly exceptional psykers whose power goes beyond the standard scale. These individuals are walking disasters waiting to happen if their abilities aren't kept in check.
Right.
It's almost like a runaway train, isn't it? You start at the bottom, and the higher you climb, the more dangerous and uncontrollable it becomes. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the minus scale, the blanks.
The blanks, yeah.
Blanks are fascinating. These individuals possess a negating effect on psychic powers. They're like walking dead zones in the warp. And they're both feared and loathed by ordinary humans and psykers alike. And speaking of how psykers experience the world, their witch sight is a particularly intriguing aspect.
Yeah.
Witch sight, their ability to perceive the psychic aura surrounding living beings, shows them a very different reality than we see.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to look at someone and instantly see their darkest emotions, manifested as monstrous forms. It must be terrifying. And on the flip side, they see those with pure intentions as angelic beings.
Right.
It's a glimpse into the raw power of the warp, a constant reminder of the forces at play. But for blanks, with their complete lack of a psychic aura, it's even more unsettling for the psyker.
Right.
It's like staring into a void, a nothingness that defies their understanding of reality. So with all these dangers in mind, it's no surprise that various factions have developed ways to counter Psykers.
Yeah.
From the Imperium's Calexis assassins with their psych-out weaponry to the Necron's Cadian pylons, there's this fascinating array of tools designed to silence or disrupt the powers of the warp.
Each method with its own unique way of disrupting, negating, or completely destroying psychic power. Take the Calexis assassins, for example. They're soulless beings, specifically bred and trained from birth to be living weapons against Psykers. Their very presence disrupts the warp, causing agonizing pain and disorientation to any Psyker nearby. And then you have the Psycannons, these brutal weapons that unleash focused blasts of disruptive energy, tearing through a Psyker's connection to the warp. It's like a sledgehammer to their psychic senses. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that.
No, I wouldn't imagine so. And for sheer scale of disruption, it's hard to beat the Necrons and their Cadian pylons. These ancient structures, when activated, have the potential to completely sever the warp from reality within a localized area. It's like suddenly switching off gravity for Psykers. A terrifying thought, but I suppose a necessary evil in the fight against the forces of chaos. It makes you wonder if the Imperium's increasing reliance on Psykers is ultimately a gamble, a necessary evil perhaps, but one that could ultimately backfire, especially with the rising number of Psykers appearing across the Imperium.
It's a question that has haunted the Imperium for millennia. On one hand, Psykers are vital to the Imperium's survival. They provide essential services like communication, navigation, and frontline combat support. Without them, the Imperium would likely collapse. But on the other hand, they represent a constant threat, a source of instability that could erupt and consume everything in an instant.
It's almost like humanity is evolving to become more psychically potent, like a slow burn that could either lead to enlightenment or annihilation. We see evidence of this in the different types of psychic disciplines that manifest. There's biomancy, for instance, which focuses on the manipulation of biological energy, essentially allowing Psykers to heal, enhance, or even weaponize the very building blocks of life.
And then there's divination, the art of peering into the swirling chaos of the warp to catch glimpses of the past, present, and future. It's a dangerous discipline, but in the right hands it allows Psykers to predict enemy movements, anticipate threats, and even influence the course of events.
Let's not forget pyromancy, the classic ability to conjure and control fire. It's visually spectacular and devastating in the right hands. Then there's telekinesis, the power to move objects with the mind. Imagine hurling boulders at your enemies or creating invisible shields to protect yourself. It's both a versatile and potent discipline.
And finally, we have telepathy, perhaps the most insidious of all the disciplines. It's the ability to delve into the minds of others, to plant suggestions, control their thoughts and actions, even driving them to madness with a mere whisper. Each discipline offers its own unique set of tools and dangers, a testament to the sheer variety of psychic potential within the warp.
It's not just humans who wield these disciplines, though. Each species with psychic abilities has its own unique expression of these powers. Take the Eldar, for example. They're renowned for their mastery of the psychic arts. Their Farseers and Warlocks can perform incredible feats of precognition and telepathy, manipulating the threads of fate with terrifying precision.
Then you have the Orcs, these savage, green-skinned warriors whose weird boys channel the raw, chaotic energy, resulting in unpredictable and often explosive bursts of psychic power. It's more about brute force than finesse with those guys.
And who could forget the Tyranids, these extragalactic horrors that descend upon worlds like a locust swarm, consuming all biomass in their path. Their hive mind is a chilling example of psychic unity and control, with every Tyranid creature psychically linked and acting as an extension of the hive mind's will.
It really paints a picture of a galaxy teeming with psychic energy, a constant struggle between those who wield it, those who seek to control it, and those who fear its very existence. And that fear, particularly from those who don't possess psychic abilities, has driven the development of some truly impressive anti-psyker technology. We've already touched on the Imperium's methods, but the Necrons, with their absolute hatred of the warp, have developed their own fascinating countermeasures.
We discussed their Cadian pylons earlier, those structures capable of severing the connection between the warp and reality, but they also employ living weapons, like the Necron pariahs.
The pariahs are fascinating. These soulless beings are completely devoid of any presence in the warp. It's as if they don't even exist on a psychic level. This makes them incredibly disruptive to Psykers and ideal bodyguards for the Necron lords who fear the touch of the warp.
And then there's the Drukhari. They may not have Psykers themselves, but they've found a way to weaponize the psychic energies of others in a rather gruesome manner. Their Crucible of Malediction is a chilling example of this.
The Crucible of Malediction is a horrifying weapon. It contains the tortured soul of an Eldar Psyker, trapped and forced to endure unimaginable suffering. This psychic anguish is then focused and amplified by the device, unleashing a cacophony of psychic pain that can overwhelm and potentially destroy any psyker unfortunate enough to be caught in its blast.
It's a brutal reminder that in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, even suffering can be turned into a weapon. And it all points back to this incredibly complex and multifaceted relationship with psychic power that exists in the Warhammer 40K universe. It's a source of both wonder and terror, capable of shaping the fate of entire civilizations.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance trying to harness this raw power without succumbing to the darker aspects of the war. I mean, the Imperium's fear of Psykers is understandable,
Right.
given their potential to become conduits for chaos.
It's a fear that's deeply rooted in their history. I mean, Psykers are essentially windows into the Imperium, this realm of pure emotion and unbridled psychic energy. And the warp, it's a breeding ground for demons, corrupting influence of chaos.
That's why the Imperium has gone to such lengths to control them.
Right.
And regulate them. I mean, you have the black ships scouring the galaxy for Psykers.
Yeah.
The Adeptus Astra Telepathica.
Responsible for their training and oversight. And the ever-watchful gaze of the Inquisition. It's a vast and intricate system designed to identify, train, and ultimately control those with psychic abilities.
But control is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with something as unpredictable and powerful as the warp.
Yeah.
I mean, even the most disciplined psyker can falter, succumbing to the whispers of chaos, tempted by forbidden knowledge and power.
And we've seen this countless times throughout the Imperium's history. Psykers turning to chaos, becoming hosts for demonic incursions.
Absolutely.
It's a nightmare scenario and a stark reminder of what's at stake. It makes you wonder if the Imperium's reliance on Psykers is a gamble, a necessary evil perhaps, but one that could ultimately lead to its downfall.
It's a question with no easy answer. I mean, Psykers are vital to the survival of the Imperium. I mean, they're essential for communication, for navigating the treacherous currents of the warp, and bolstering their defenses against countless enemies. Without them, the Imperium would crumble. But at the same time, they represent this inherent instability, this hidden threat that could unravel everything in a heartbeat. It's a constant struggle between pragmatism and fear, and as humanity's psychic potential continues to grow, this struggle will only intensify. It begs the question, will we learn to master our psychic abilities, to harness this power for good?
Or will we succumb to the temptations of chaos, becoming the very thing we fear most? Only time will tell. But one thing is for certain, the role of Psykers in the Warhammer 40K universe is endlessly fascinating. It's a testament to the power of the human mind and the terrifying potential of the warp.
Absolutely.
It's a constant reminder that in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, even the most powerful weapons can be a double-edged sword.
Right.
The fate of humanity might very well rest on how they manage to control the power within.